After Mom died suddenly in a car accident, I had no one left. I was just 17. My dad had already been out of the picture for years. Last I heard, he had a new family in Florida. My grandparents had passed. It was just me. So when my Aunt Lorna offered to take me in, I cried with relief. Of course, sweetheart. Your family. She picked me up after the funeral. I sat in the back seat with just a duffel bag of clothes and a framed photo of Mom. But when we got to her place, I realized this wouldn't be what I imagined. There was no spare bedroom like she said, just an old tool shed out back. It smelled like rust and gasoline. No windows. No heat. Just a sleeping bag and a battery lamp. You'll be fine in here for a few months. It's just temporary while we sort space. I didn't argue. I was numb. The next day, I came home from school and my duffel bag was gone. Everything, my journal, my books, even Mom's photo, missing. Oh honey, she said, chewing gum and painting her nails. I sold your stuff at the yard sale. You need to start fresh. Let go. Let go. That night, I cried so hard I nearly made myself sick. I missed Mom. I missed feeling safe. Aunt Lorna didn't cook. If I didn't make it back by 5 p.m., dinner was whatever I could find in the pantry, usually crackers. She said it was character building. She posted photos of me on Facebook like I was her daughter, captioned "So proud to raise this sweet girl." She'd smile for those pictures. Then ask me to clean her bathroom after. At school, I kept my head down. No one knew I slept in a shed. No one knew I brushed my teeth in a garden hose. Until someone did. His name was Mr. Carter. Our school counselor. He noticed I always wore the same clothes, didn't eat lunch, and winced when I sat down. He pulled me aside one day. "I'm here if you ever want to talk." I almost broke. But I wasn't ready yet. Not until she tried to kick me out, in the middle of a snowstorm. It was mid-January. Snow had blanketed the ground, and the shed had started leaking from the roof. I woke up one night shivering so badly I couldn't move my fingers. My breath came out in white puffs, and the battery-powered lamp had long died. I wrapped myself tighter in the sleeping bag, the same one I had since the night I arrived, but it wasn't enough. The cold seeped into my bones. By morning, I was dizzy and couldn't feel my toes. I went to the back porch and knocked. "Aunt Lorna. I'm not feeling well. I think I'm..." She opened the door, already dressed in a leopard print coat and holding her keys. "You'll be fine. I'm running errands. Heat up some soup if you're so cold." And then she left. I stood there, shivering, for a full minute before I realized she'd locked the door behind her. That evening, it got worse. My body ached. My throat burned. I could barely stand. I didn't want to be dramatic. But I knew this wasn't normal. I needed help. I managed to drag myself to the school the next morning. I didn't even make it past the entrance. Mr. Carter spotted me instantly. His eyes widened. I must have looked awful. He took one look at my pale face and trembling frame and immediately pulled me into his office. "Tell me everything," he said gently. This time, I did. An hour later, CPS was called. Within the day, I was removed from Aunt Lorna's home. She acted shocked, even cried on the phone when the social worker spoke to her. "She's lying. I gave her everything. That girl's just troubled, always has been." But it was too late. The evidence was stacked. The school nurse documented mild frostbite on my feet and malnutrition signs. The pictures of the shed were enough on their own. I was placed with a temporary foster family, kind, older people named Richard and Marlene. That first night in their warm guest room, under real blankets, I sobbed. Not because I was scared, but because for the first time in months, I wasn't. 3 months passed. I slowly returned to being me. I focused on school. Ate real meals. Laughed. Mr. Carter checked in often. Richard and Marlene were supportive. It was peace. But one afternoon, Marlene handed me a letter. "This came for you, sweetheart. No return address." I opened it cautiously. Inside was a folded note written in neat cursive. "You think you're so smart? You ruined my reputation. No one trusts me anymore. You better hope you never need anything again, because I won't lift a finger. Aunt Lorna." No apology. No remorse. Just bitterness. But I didn't care anymore. Because she didn't control me anymore. 6 months later, I graduated high school. Mr. Carter helped me apply for scholarships. I got accepted into a local university with housing. Richard and Marlene cried when I moved out. "Come back for Sunday dinners," Marlene insisted. Every week, I promised. And I kept that promise. But life, as it does, had one more surprise in store for me. It happened my second year of college. I was walking to my part-time job when someone called my name. I turned and nearly dropped my coffee. It was a man. Mid-40s. Worn face. Nervous eyes. He stepped closer and said the words that stopped my world. "I'm your father." Purple circle. "I'm your father." The words didn't make sense at first. I blinked at him, confused, cold coffee dripping down my wrist. He looked nothing like the faint, blurred image I had in my head, just a tall man with graying hair, guilt etched into every line on his face. "Your mom's name was Marissa," he said quietly. "You were just a baby when I left." I wasn't ready. I didn't even know where to start. "But I've been looking for you." My mind went blank. Then flooded. A storm of emotions, betrayal, confusion, anger, hope, all crashing into each other. "You left us," I whispered. He nodded. "I did. And I've hated myself for it every day since." We sat on a park bench. He told me about his life. About his regret. About how he had finally tracked me down through public records, after years of searching, failed attempts, and the recent CPS case being made public. I didn't say much. How do you respond to a man who abandoned you? That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing. I thought about my mother, who had raised me alone until the car accident that took her. I thought about Aunt Lorna, the cold shed, the bitterness. And now, this man. My father. The next week, he came to campus again. I'm not here to push, he said gently. Just wanted to bring you something. He handed me a box. Inside were photos, old baby pictures of me, of him holding me in a hospital room, of my mom smiling while swaddling me. I never stopped loving you, he said. I just didn't know how to be a father back then. And I was scared. But I want to know you now, if you'll let me. I didn't forgive him right away. But I met with him again. And again. Slowly, we began to talk. Really talk. He told me stories about my mom I'd never heard. About how she used to sing 80s rock ballads while cooking. About how fiercely she loved me. About how devastated he was when he found out she'd passed, too late. But trust isn't built in a few meetings. There were days I didn't answer his calls. Days I replayed my childhood in my head and wondered where he had been during all of it. But he never gave up. Never pushed. He just showed up, at the park, near campus, at my favorite cafe, always with patience in his eyes and a quiet voice that never once said I deserve anything. One Sunday dinner, I brought him to Richard and Marlene's. They were polite, cautious, protective. But after dessert, Richard pulled me aside. He's not perfect. But he's trying. And you're allowed to have questions without needing to hate him forever. One rainy afternoon, I finally asked him the hardest question. Why didn't you come back sooner? He sighed. A deep, heavy breath like he'd been waiting to exhale it for years. I thought I'd ruin your life. That I'd be one more mistake. But the truth is, I was selfish. And I can't undo that. All I can do is be better now. I nodded slowly. For the first time, I believed him. Months passed. He became a quiet part of my life. Not a replacement for anything, just a presence. And then, during my final semester, he handed me a small envelope. Inside was a check. Enough to cover my student debt. Consider it late child support, he said with a half smile. I don't want your money, I replied instantly. Then consider it a gift from a man who missed too many birthdays. I cried. Not because of the check. But because it was the first time someone had shown up for me like that. No expectations, no conditions. Just love. On graduation day, he stood beside Richard and Marlene. He clapped the loudest. He cried the quietest. And when I looked out into the crowd, he was smiling like a man who had finally forgiven himself. Purple circle. 3 months after graduation, I stood on a beach in Santa Cruz, barefoot, jeans rolled up, staring at the waves that had always scared me as a child. My father sat a few feet behind me on a picnic blanket, sketching the view, something I didn't know he did until recently. Apparently, it had always been his quiet escape. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, pencil still moving. "About how life never gives you a clean ending," I replied. He chuckled softly. "That's the truth." I had finally found peace. Not closure. Closure's a myth. No one gets a perfect apology or the moment where all the pain disappears. But peace? That was real. I found it in letting go of the questions that would never be answered. Why didn't he fight harder for us? Why did my mom never tell me the full truth? Why did I have to go through so many years of silence, pain, and loneliness before life even gave me a chance to breathe? No answers. Just waves. And quiet. A week later, I packed my boxes. I was moving out of Richard and Marlene's. Not because I had to, they told me I could stay as long as I wanted, but because I wanted to finally build something of my own. A small one-bedroom apartment with second-hand furniture, crooked blinds, and a view of the alley. And I loved it. Leo came to visit often. He'd bring me leftover casseroles, random mugs with inspirational quotes, and photos of his newest Lego builds. He called my dad the sketch guy and asked him questions about art and shading. It was weird, but good. One rainy Thursday, while reorganizing my bookshelf, I found my old CPS case file. Yellowed. Edges torn. Still smelled like mildew and fear. I sat on the floor and read through it again. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just acknowledged it. That version of me, the scared, hungry, cold girl hiding behind walls of sarcasm and silence, deserved to be seen. Not pitted. Not erased. Seen. So I took out a lighter. And I burned the file. Not out of anger, but as a quiet ritual of release. 6 months later, I stood outside a community center in Oakland, holding a clipboard and welcoming a new batch of foster teens to our weekly creative writing workshop. Some were shy. Some were angry. Some were exactly like I used to be. And I didn't preach to them. I didn't try to fix them. I just sat beside them, shared my story, and listened when they told theirs. One girl named Jazz whispered to me during break. "You're the first adult who didn't look at me like I was broken." That night, I went home and sobbed. But this time, they were tears of purpose. My father? He's still around. Still sketching. Still showing up. He never asked for a title. Never called himself dad. Just kept trying. Kept loving. And that was enough. On my 28th birthday, he handed me a small package. Inside was a framed sketch of a little girl, sitting in a corner of a shed, holding a book, the words, "Her story is just beginning." He didn't sign it. He didn't need to. As I write this now, I'm sitting at the same beach. Leo is running in circles nearby, chasing a kite with his cousins. The waves crash in their endless rhythm. And I finally understand something my mother once told me in a letter I found after her passing. Life isn't about the people who left. It's about the ones who stayed. And the person you become in between. So if you're reading this, if you've ever felt abandoned, invisible, unloved, or forgotten, please hear me when I say, you are not broken. You are not too late. Your story isn't over. And you get to choose your own ending. Just like I did.